Good morning. This is course title File and File System. The instructor is Fred Dula. Thank you for this opportunity for coming again or logging online to do this particular maybe course. As we have been doing other units on this, that is the unit on digital forensic. Today we want to look at the file and the file system, and we'll be going through some of the part of the file and file system that will be able to help us to understand how data are saved in external and internal storage, and this will be very important when it comes to either when we are looking at for evidence from the file system. That's for those people who are doing cybersecurity, and those who are doing ICT also. You understand how data is saved in your storage devices. So as we say, I want us to look at first what is file system, and sometimes it is a bit tricky when it comes to explaining what exactly file system is, and this comes as a result of different people defining this file system in different way. And you say that a file system, as I maybe just put it on your screen, can be explained by referring to a specific the naming, storing and retrieving of file from the storage devices, and your operating system uses what you call the internal file system to load the file from the storage devices each time you open a file on your computer or in your mobile phone, because also there's a file system in mobile phone. And we say that it can be also the file system that manage the file when you copy or you do the editing or you delete a file from either your computer or your mobile phone. And we say that a file system is also involved whenever you view the file, or let's say in a website, or you download a file over the internet. I want to give illustration. For example, as illustration, we can say that you can access a page on our Brand Institute website, and you can browse it, and when you are browsing in it, there will be a request that will be made through a browser using what you call the HTTP request to load that particular website from the server where that page is based. And we are saying that a file is fetched from the file, and if requested resource is a file, it will be brought unto you. And even as we say this, it can sometimes get confusing when you individually discuss this file system, because depending on the situation, they may be referring to different part of file system. But we are going to look at what exactly file system is and what can help us to understand more file system. To bring this home, I want us to look at why do we need a file system. And we say that the storage devices will have a significant amount of data stored back to back without file system, and the operating system will not be even able to distinguish them, which file is which. And the term file system was first used to refer to the traditional paper-based data management system, where we store our document in directory as a file, as files. So I want you just to imagine a room that is filled with variety of papers stacked there. And I had another picture. Let me see if I had it here. No, I didn't have it here. But I want you to view a library. I just want you see a library. First, I want to look at a room, just a room where there's papers just put inside without arranging. They're just dumped there. It might be a little bit difficult for you to get exact maybe book or paper you need. And look also at that time, also imagine the same predicament you will also apply to maybe um, not even but let's say I'm saying first, let's look at a room with files which are just dumped there, and maybe you need a book or a particular file. It might be difficult to get it. The same scenario, I want you to look at if we have a very well arranged library where we have the shelf each and every corner. So if you want a book, you go to the catalog, and from the catalog, you know this particular book, you can get it in here. So it will be very easy for you to get a book, and that's what we are going to use as an illustration to explain what file system is. But as I'm talking about a room full of papers, a variety of papers we are not arranged, I want you to look at the same predicament and apply it to the storage of the devices in the computer. And you say that when you look at such a file, it will make it difficult for you to able to get what you want. And when you say the file system can be more just like a bookkeeping function, the file system is also can also be responsible for managing what you call the space, metadata, data encryption, data access control, and also data integrity. So we are saying that now through the file system you can achieve a number of things, and mostly those who are doing cyber security, I want you to pay attention into this, because most of the time when you will be looking at the evidence, or you are looking at the area where you have been compromised or you are attacked by the hackers, you will be concentrating on the space that allow that loophole. You will be concentrating on the metadata. You will be concentrating on the type of data encryption that you have, or the file access method that was used, and also that will answer whether you have a data integrity or not. So when we are saying that, we need to look at a little bit file system in terms of what you call the partition. So we say everything begin with partition. So we need to understand before user or storage devices are used, they are always formatted. Okay, and a storage devices is partitioned when the device is divided into numerous logical area, so that each of one of those area can be controlled as if they were separate storage devices. I'm very much aware, because last semester we did something on our computer repair and maintenance. We did how you can know how to format a hard disk, how to do the partition. And if you didn't get it clear, it's good to revise back, because that's where we talked about partitioning of the file. And we say that partitioning is typically done using what you call disk management tool that offer by operating system, or a command line tool offered by the system firmware. So you find that the manufacturers will ensure that that firmware that can help you in managing the disk, and that you'll use for partition of the disk, is already installed in the system. And we say a storage device ought to have a minimum of one partition, and maybe can be more. As you realize what we did, we are able to partition our hard disk maybe into more than one. Sometimes you might have a space of, let's say, 5 GB, and you want to only use 2 GB for the operating system and also the application system. But now the remaining 3 GB, you want to use it as backup, where you can put your movie, you can put other files. So when you separate like that, that's what we call partition. And you say, as illustrated, the most fundamental Linux installation contain 3 partitions. When you come to Linux, mostly you will get 3 partitions. One for what you call the operating system, and the other one for the user's file, and then the last one for what you call the swamp partition. We are going to look at again a little bit on swamp partition. So we say that when RAM is full, a swamp partition server as an expansion of RAM. When when the RAM is full, and remember RAM is random access memory, and we say that when RAM is full, because RAM always ensure that the files that are open or active are maintained in the computer. When it's full, it cannot do that. That's what always we call the support that comes from what we call the swamp file, and this is very important for even those who are doing cyber security, because when we're looking at forensic tool, remember we talked about something to do with the storage on the RAM, and this is where now you'll be getting those information that you'll want, mostly if you're working on item which is live. So we say, for instance, when the operating system may temporarily reload some of the data from RAM to swamp, and you say partition in order to free up some spaces. The reason why the operating system will want to load some data from RAM to swamp is in order to free some space in the RAM, so that your computer might not be slow as the process of maintaining those files when the computer is running live. So we say operating system then constantly employ a variety of memory management strategy to guarantee that each process has enough memory function so that your computer can function in terms of memory. So we say similar design. The file on the Windows, because we have given explanation of Linux, the file on the Windows and Mac can also swamp within the partition, where your partition system is installed rather than using the separate swamp partition. So they can use the swamp partition within the partition where you partition with the time you are formatting or preparing the disk for use. So we say you can install various operating systems on a computer with several partitions, and you can also select different operating systems to start your computer with each time you start. So we say, like for example, when you look at Windows and Mac, they give you opportunity where you can run more than one window, and those windows will be running in a different partition. And that's why sometimes when you want to do even the swamping, they can use the other partition that you have done. And I think that one being the practical, if you are keen with that was demonstrated. So we said that the recovery and diagnostic tool are also located on separate partitions. So I mentioned something when we are doing the partitioning of our hard disk. And we say that when you have a 5 GB hard disk, when the partitioning and formatting process is taking place, there always a space that reserved, and that space is used for various things like storing of the binary data. And also we are saying that now the recovery and diagnostic tools are also located on a separate partition, and that partition most likely is always that reserved partition. For instance, you may own a command where you put the plus and R as soon as your MacBook restart for the power on. So in order to boot it up in a recovery mode, sometimes you are doing this, that you tell the server or the firmware to start the recovery procedure on its own. Okay, and that's why sometimes when you press the command plus R, you are doing what you call recovery. So however, the partition also allow us to separate the important file from the command, that allow us to install the multiple operating system and tools. And therefore we can say that since they are installed and are installed in separate partition, the installing more games won't have any impact on the operating system performance, because now you are trying to achieve how to maintain the computer to work. And they said that reverting to the office scenario, having a call center and a tech team in the same space would have been detrimental in both team productivity, as one has a different need for efficiency. I want us to look at the way maybe we can have the partition becoming very important, and that's also will give us important of how we manage the file. And that's why we are giving illustration, an example of having two type of staff in the office. This is the people that working at the tech department or the IT department, and the people that work at the call center. The IT department, most of the time, they're quiet when they're working. They're doing something, they're maybe formatting, they're doing the files, so they may not need noise. Call center is where these people are receiving a lot of calls, so there's a lot of communication. So we are saying basically, sometimes it can be very difficult for these two people to be productive if you put them one day where you have the same room, you have the IT people there, or the tech people there, and also you have the call center people there. And we're saying, for instance, a call, the people that in the call may appreciate environment where you can talk easily with that, but IT people will appreciate an environment which is a little bit cool. So we say some operating system like Windows give each partition a drive. Okay. So for that they need to partition. They need to separate some of these things where you run other maybe system in a particular partition and another partition. And you say that now when you look at the instance of Windows, they always give each partition which has been done a particular letters. It can be A, B, C, and D. Like most time people use C, and that's why we call the hard drive partition that run operating system as drive C. So for instance, the main window partition where the window is installed is also referred to as C or drive C, and that's what I explained. So you say, however, the partition show up as a regular directory under root directory, like in when you look at Unix like operating system, and that one will again discuss as we continue this particular training. And I want us to come and look at partitioning schema or system firmware and the booting system. And remember, when we talk about booting system, I just want to remind you, because we did this, we said that there's two types of booting system. There's what we call the cold booting, where we start the computer when it was completely off. And then also we have warm booting, where we start computer, it was working, and you have done what you call the restarting. And you say, we have two partition technique or schemes to pick from when we are partitioning a device. It can be a hard disk, can be a flash disk, can be any other device that is a storage in nature. So the first technique we can talk about is what called master booting record scheme or technique, or MBR. And then other one you call it the guide partition table or GPT schema. And he said that the first few blocks on the storage device will always contain crucial information about your partition, regardless of the partition technique you need. So we are saying when you have a storage, the first few blocks will always contain information that help that storage to function in a particular way. And say that this data structure are used by the device firmware to launch the operating system. We say that the device firmware can put information that can help the computer to start, and we're saying that those information like what help the computer to start. So we say computer peripheral devices like keyboard, mouse, printer, as well as electronic home appliance all have what called the firmware. Remember, when you buy a new computer, you might not need to install the drivers for the mouse. Okay, you might not need sometimes you install the drivers for the keyboard. You put the keyboard and you put the mouse, attach the computer. When you put the power, before even you do the partition, you find that this peripheral devices are working by default, because there's some firmware that have been put there by manufacturer to enable those devices to work. So we say the firmware is a type of low-level software. When we talk about firmware, is a type of low-level software that is integrated into electronic devices and is also used either to boot up another device or control the device himself. So that's what a firmware is. So we say computer peripheral devices like now keyboard, now mouse and printers, as well as electronic home appliances all have the firmware, because I've told you what the firmware is. So we say for complicated software like now the operating system, to start up and interact with the physical component in the computer, the firmware provides what we call the standard interface, and we look at also what standard interface as we continue in this course. And say the firmware on the other hand serve as the operating system in smaller system like now printer. So the firmware, which I've explained to be the type of low-level software that integrate into electronic and devices, and we say that they can be on the other hand serve as the operating system in small devices such as keyboard, printer, and all that. And say interface of your printer firmware is the menu of your utility. And you talk about type of software, you talk about utility, application software, and operating system software. So we are saying that now the interface of your printer firmware is the menu that the printer utilize to come up so that it can start working as you install the other. So we say firmware is produced by hardware company in accordance with two specifications. And these two specifications I want to talk about. The first one is called BIOS, or basic input output. And remember, when we are looking at the hardware, we say there's something called CMOS BIOS, okay? Meaning that the CMOS BIOS is where the instruction are put by manufacturer to help set some of the information that needed to start the computer. And we say that those information needed for the basic input and output of the computer. So when you talk about basic input output, I just want to understand that that's what help the computer to start in an volatile memory, such as when the flash ROM that is affixed to the motherboard to make the part of the hardware, like in the motherboard, to function. So we say a firmware is first application to launch when you turn on your computer. So when you turn on your computer, the first application to be launched is the firmware. And they say the firmware duty include starting the computer. So when you start the computer, that's work is done by firmware, running the operating system, and also giving it overall system control. So we say firmware can also run a pre-operating environment such as recovery or diagnostic tool, or even a shell to execute text-based command over the network. So we say your computer firmware check the health of your memory hardware component on the first few screen you see before the window logo display. And when you start your window, sometimes your window or your computer, you see the screen loading, sometimes it prepares other things before it give you the desktop where you can function. So we are saying that during that time, what always operate there is the firmware. It makes sure that it load the pre-operating system or environment, and it makes sure that everything, the diagnostic tool, everything is in place before even you start now using the computer. So you see, a beep on the computer always follow initial checkouts, confirm everything is okay. Sometimes when you put the computer, I know most computer does not do that, but long time when everything has been okay, you see something like T. That's a beep now that everything has been set and everything is okay. Apart from that, we have what we call now the Unified Extendable Firmware Interface. And when you look at this, you will find that this also one of the interfaces that help in unifying the extension of other programs that can be used. And I will want you to learn more about this, and I will also give you more notes on that. Because of time, I want us straight away to look at, that's the picture of what you call the chips that on the motherboard, that always you can call part of the ROM, where the instruction which is read-only memory are saved. Okay, I want us now to go straight away into how file system work, because what I was giving you here was at least the background on how files are stored and the importance of file system. So when we say how file system work, we say first that an index of all data on a storage device can be thought of a file system. So an index of all data on the storage device can be thought as a file system. So we are saying the file system can, just like an index arrangement of the file in your computer, and which store and organize data. So hard drive or optical drive, flash disk, or some are some of the example of this gadget. So look at the picture we have on your screen. We have a folder called Tom, and that folder called Tom has got other folder inside it, or files. Inside it we have one called folder called data, we have another one called thesis, we have one called notes.txt, and then we have one called tools. On the one data, you can also have a subfolder. And remember, when we are doing our basic digital literacy, we did something to do with subfolder. So you can have one or two. Again, on the tool, you can have format, start, and all that. So when you talk about file system, this is what should be in your mind. Is a system of arranging the file in the computer. So we are saying the maximum number of characters that can be used in the name that permit character and is also in the system. The length of the file are always specified by the file system convention. So file names are frequently not case sensitive in the file. For example, when you are naming a particular file in the computer, they will not restrict that you have to type capital, you have to type numbers, you can name it anything. And say file system also store what you call the metadata that about the file. And in the file system, you have things that include things like attribute, the location where that file is, the hierarchy in that file. For example, if it is, let's say the file called one is found in the data, and data is found in Tom. That's what we call the file hierarchy. And also, in addition, you can also have the file itself, information about it when you are looking at the file system. So additionally, metadata can show how much space is available and which free space of the storage on the device. So when you look about the file system, it's not only about where the location the file, what when option you're deleting, modify, but also can show you the space. Why is this important? Mostly, again, for this particular class, cybersecurity guys and ISP, it's very important also to know how much space is remaining there. If you are to do a recovery, if you are to do a backup, how much space of the device you'll use to make a copy of this you need. And that's why it's always good to know the file system. And so we say that a file system also has what you call syntax, or describe the file route through the hierarchy of directory. And I will explain to that. In the view of the Windows operating system, file is placed in a directory, a folder, or a subdirectory at a specific location in the tree structure. So when you are looking for a file, you are doing investigation, you're just not looking for a file. You must look at it from a particular directory, a particular location, and this information can be explained well, and that's where the file system come in handy. And you say a file is placed in a directory, or it can be placed in a folder, or it can be placed in what you call the subdirectory. So file system exists in our computers and mobile operating system. So we have file in our computer, we have file in mobile, because like if you are to look at mobile forensic, you want to look at how mobile is used in hacking, like for the people who are doing cyber security. It's important to see where the files are organized, some place where the hierarchies and the tree, and understand where will I get this file. When this photos was copied, it was copied for which computer and then spread into the internet. Let's say you are dealing a case of child pornography. You are looking at where somebody put information that was to damage somebody's image. So we say partition should also be established on the storage media before the file and directory are generated there. So, and before now the file and the directory are put there, there always a partition. And that's why you find that sometimes when you buy a flash disk, the first thing you do formatting. When you are doing the formatting, you have always been doing what you call partitioning. I know most of cases some of you do only one partition. But now even if you take a flash disk, you can also do more than one partition. You can say half of that flash disk, maybe you save this file, and the app you can use it for another thing, meaning that you can also create a partition in any storage device. So we say an area of hard drive or other storage device that the operating system controls separately is referred to as partition. So where the operating system control is that what we look at and say is the partition. So we say the primary partition only contain one file system, while some operating system permits several partition on single drive. So in every partition we only have one file system. So for example, if you have files in your computer, the structure, the first structure will be one, the main file will be one, and the rest will be either subdirectory or directory under that file. So we say that in a partition, we only have one file system. So if you want to have different file systems, you mean that you'll have different partition. So we are saying on this case, even if one file system become corrupt, the information in another partition will be secure. And that's why sometimes it's very important when you are preparing your disk to have more than one partition, so that if one partition is file system is corrupt, does not mean the other one. And that's why you find that in a computer you can have the main drive and you have what called the backup. Backup will have the same information as what you have on the main partition, so that when the main partition file system is corrupt, does not mean the backup also is corrupt, and that can be a better way of securing your information. So file system has got a role. And I just want us to look at briefly what are some of the role of the file system. So it's a file system use what we call the metadata in storing and retrieving file, as we say. Example of this metadata include date the file is created. So from the file system, we know the date that particular file is created, the date it was modified. Very important for those who are doing cyber security. The date it was modified, the last date it was accessed, the last backup it was copied somewhere, the user ID of the file. Anytime you work on a computer, and it will always pick the person who logged in as a user. Okay, the access permission, whether it is administrator or which level. You look at also the file size, will tell you about the file type. Having said that, let us quickly and very fast look at some of the file system type of file system. And this is also important because this will help you to understand when you are working with a particular maybe information data in the computer. You must understand which of the type of file system that is in that drive. So I'll go to mention number of them, and I want to start with the first one, what you call the file allocation table, or we call it FAT. In fact, this is what the file system that have been there, and when we started our computer, those started a little bit earlier. In 1999, the file system that was there was the file allocation table. And we say a specific user group read and write access can also be restricted by file system. You can through now the FAT, you can restrict specific access and user, whether user can write or do something on that particular file. So we say the easy method to do this is via the use of things like password. Restricting access can also help guarantee that. The easier method to do this is to, we are saying the restricting access can also help guarantee that the data change is regulated and limited. And we say as well as who allow to read or alter particular file. So you say the file permissions such as access or capability control list can also be used to moderate the file system access, and the type of mechanisms are useful in preventing the access by regular user but not an effective against outsider. So we say that we have a file system called FAIR, and this file system helps us to control who read and who access particular file. And we have said that it also deals with things to do with permission. But as much as it deals with the permission, there's some limitation. We say that it can be useful to prevent access by regular user, but not an effective against the outsider, meaning that the file system, which is the file allocation table, has got a loophole. Yes, it can help restrict, control those who are using the file internally, but now the outsider, there's some loophole that can be used by intruder to gain access to your site. So you say file permissions such as access or control list can also be used in moderating the file access. And while the encryption can also block the user access, its main goal is to defend the system against external threat. An encryption text can also be encrypted using encryption key, and also encrypted text may also be decrypted using a key. So one of the property the file allocation table has, it has got what you call the encryption and encryption key. And we say with the encryption, the file system can properly manage the data without knowing the encryption key. So we are saying that this type of file system, which I want to now explain even in detail, some of them can control, some of them cannot control. And when you say that we talk about now the Fiat in particular, you say it was a file system that was brought in or was supported by Windows operating system. And you say that Microsoft Windows operating system support what you call the file allocation table, and Fiat is based on legacy of system that thought to be straightforward and dependable. In 1977, Fiat was created by a floppy drive. Floppy drive is what one of the storage devices we are using before. Although it was later modified for the use on the hard drive, that is the hard disk, Fiat is effective and works with most of the more modern operating system, although it fell short of more contemporary file system in terms of performance and scalability. You find that now the file allocation table was one of the Microsoft Windows property or software, and it was performance because it was only meant for floppy disk. Then later on modify a little bit to use in hard drive. But now the performance and scalability was a little bit below the expectation, and through that other file system came in. And for example, on the other side, the global file system GFF came in, and this was a Linux operating system, global file system, and it was shared this file, and the GS also allocated file that provide direct access to shared block of storage. So what we are saying that now, apart from Windows coming with the FAT or FAT, the Linux other side they came with what we call the global file system that will use to help you to share the block of the file, and with the feature not presented on the original GFF, such as enhanced metadata system. G2 also came in, so they came out with what you call GFS2. That was updated version of GFS, and both the GF and GF2 file system are downloaded for free as per what we call the GNU General Public License. So Linux file system use what you call the global file system. It has worked, it has been there for some time, and it has helped in managing the file system in Linux operating system. Then apart from that, we have other file system, like we have what we call the hierarchical file system, or HFS, and they say that this file system was created specifically for the Mac operating system. So remember, Windows came out with FAT, Linux came out with GFS. Now Mac operating system came out with their own filing system, and they call it HFS. And you say which the FLS, which is also known as Mac operating system standard, was replaced by what you call Mac operating system extended, or Mac OS extended. The original Macintosh file system were replaced by what you call the FSS, which was first released back in 1984 for the floppy disk and the hard disk, and can also be applied to the CD-ROM as well. They use it now to manage also the file in the CD, when you put CD in the CD-ROM. So for the Mac address, the file system they've been using is what you call the FSF. Now apart from that, Windows came out with another advanced file system, and this file system, they call it the NTFS. So the new technology file system, sometimes also known as NT file system, is a primary system for Windows product, as I said, that start with Windows 3.1. Remember, when the Windows 3.1 came, is when we started using the graphic, and also we are replacing the floppy 5.5 floppy and 3.5 floppy drive, and also meaning that by that time now a lot of emphasis was put on the storage, because now the emerging of the even the hackers and all that. So we say better metadata support and performance, and also what you call the disk space utility, were most important consideration for Windows to upgrade from FAT to NTSC. And from that time, the free open source NTFC also drive came in, and the Linux operating system also started supporting the NTFC, and now the NTFC also was supported by the Mac operating system, meaning that now the Linux GFS now started now incorporating how now even you can use file system that has been generated from Windows to the Mac, and also to the Linux, and also the Mac operating system also allow, so they consider the structure of that particular file system, so that you don't need, even if you work on a Mac machine, you can read that file system again into another machine. So lastly, I want us to look at what we call the universal disk format. That's also another file system, and you say the vendor nature of file system used as optical media and DVD is also called universal disk file format, or UDF. And the DVD format has decided that UDF will take the role of what you call the ISO 9660 file system as the standard file system for DVD, video, and audio. So when the introduction of now the way you can save information on the CD and DVD, there was a need to get what you call the universal disk format that can help any type of disk, because now the manufacture of the CD and DVD became increased, and you didn't want to limit to particular operating system file system. So they said that let's have a universal disk format system, which is UDF, and this one helped in now ensure that now any operating system can read a CD or a disk and all that. So one thing I want us to look at, there's a number of file systems that I've just mentioned a few of them, and I want you to take your time, go through them, and basically for this class, we just wanted to know that we have file system, what are the file system, how the file system are work, which operating system has got different file system. And as we continue in this, because now I know this is a combined class for those who are doing ICT and those who are doing cybersecurity. Those who are doing cybersecurity, in future there will be a specific area where now we look at deeper on the structure of the file system. For the ICT, that information is enough for this level, and as we continue at the level, also now we look at now more on the structures of the file saved in the drive. Thank you very much for this opportunity and for listening to this, whether you are listening to it online or live. And as always, I always say that please subscribe to this channel so that the YouTube also will alert you every time we upload a new video. And thank you for this class, and I hope you have enjoyed class. In case of any compliment or comment, you can also give me a note and just let me know if this area that was not clear. I will ensure that that also is done, or I can do another video just to clarify that area. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.